The divorce papers weren't even cold when Derek Ashford shoved his ex-wife toward the front door. His new bride, her former best friend, standing behind him with arms crossed and a victorious smirk painted across her face. What Derek didn't know, what he couldn't possibly have known as he grabbed Eleanor's shoulder and physically pushed her toward the exit, was that the woman he just cast aside had received the call exactly 47 minutes earlier. She'd won the $550 million government contract, the largest infrastructure deal the Department of Transportation had awarded in a decade. Eleanor's father, Richard, a man who'd built his modest construction company with his bare hands over 30 years, stood beside his daughter in the foyer of what used to be her home. His weathered face pale with shock as Derek's hand connected with his chest, shoving the 72-year-old man backward. The temperature outside had dropped to 19 degrees, and fat snowflakes were already accumulating on the driveway at a rate that would soon make the roads impassable. Derek's new wife, whose name Eleanor could barely bring herself to think anymore, stepped forward then, her designer heels clicking against the marble Eleanor had personally selected during the renovation, and did something that would haunt Eleanor's nightmares for weeks to come. She spat directly in Eleanor's face. The warm saliva hit Eleanor's cheek and slid down slowly, humiliatingly, while Derek said nothing, did nothing, just stood there with his jaw clenched and his hands still extended from pushing her father. Eleanor's phone buzzed again in her coat pocket. The third call from her attorney, Thomas, who was desperate to tell her about the contract modification, the additional $75 million the government had just added for the accelerated timeline, bringing the total to $625 million. But she couldn't answer, couldn't move, could only stand there in the home she'd made beautiful, staring at the man she'd loved for 12 years, and the woman who'd pretended to be her confidant for even longer. What Eleanor would do in the days that followed, the decisions she would make with that $625 million, the empire she would build on the ashes of her humiliation, the precise and calculated way she would systematically dismantle everything Derek had built, would crush him so completely that he would later tell his therapist he couldn't breathe when he thought about it. But in this moment, as Derek grabbed both Eleanor and her father by their coats and physically pushed them out into the snow, slamming the door behind them hard enough that the wreath fell off its hook, he was utterly, catastrophically unaware that the wife he'd divorced to marry her best friend had just won the $550 million government contract that would change everything. The question that would consume Derek in the sleepless nights ahead was simple but devastating. How had he not seen what Eleanor was capable of? How had he looked at this woman every day for over a decade and never recognized the quiet power she'd been accumulating, the connections she'd been nurturing, the brilliant mind she'd been honing, while he dismissed her contributions as cute and adorable? And the question that would eventually break him completely? What would she do now that she had the resources, the platform, and the burning motivation to show him exactly who he'd thrown away? The fall. The snow soaked through Eleanor's wool coat within seconds, but she barely felt it. Her father stumbled beside her, catching himself against the lamppost they'd installed together 3 summers ago, when this house still felt like home. Richard's breathing came in short, sharp gasps, the kind that Eleanor recognized from his heart attack scare 2 years prior, and the sound of it finally broke through her shock. "Dad!" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Dad, breathe. Slow down. In and through your nose." Through the large bay window, the one Eleanor had fought with the contractor about because she wanted it positioned to catch the morning light just right, she could see Derek and the woman who was now his wife. Vivian. The name felt like glass in Eleanor's mind. Vivian was laughing, her head thrown back, Derek's arm around her waist. They were toasting with champagne flutes, crystal ones from Eleanor's wedding registry, celebrating the finalization of their marriage that had taken place just 6 hours earlier in a rushed courthouse ceremony. Eleanor's phone buzzed again, then continuously, like someone was calling repeatedly, hanging up, and immediately redialing. She pulled it out with shaking hands, snow already beginning to accumulate on the screen. 15 missed calls from Thomas Whitmore, her attorney. 8 from Jennifer Park, her business partner. 12 from unknown numbers with Washington, D.C. area codes. and 47 unread emails with subject lines that made her frozen fingers tighten around the device. Congratulations on the dot contract. Interview request. The woman behind the 550 memoirs deal. Partnership opportunity. Ashford Infrastructure Project. Contract expansion. Additional 75 Mellers approved. Her father's hand found her elbow. Ellie, we need to get to the car before... Before what? Eleanor's voice came out hollow. She was still staring at the window, at Derek's hand sliding down Vivian's back, at the way Vivian turned her head to whisper something in Derek's ear that made him grin. Before we freeze to death? Before they feel guilty? They're not going to feel guilty, Dad. Before you do something you'll regret, Richard said quietly. I know that look, Eleanor Marie. I've seen it exactly 3 times in your life, and each time, someone ended up on the wrong side of your decisions. Eleanor finally turned to look at her father. Snow had already begun to settle in his gray hair, making him look older than his 72 years. His construction company jacket, the one with Dalton and Sons Construction, embroidered on the chest, even though he'd never had sons, only a daughter who'd proven more capable than any son could have been, was wholly inadequate for this weather. She'd begged him to buy a proper winter coat last year. He'd refused, saying the company needed new equipment more than he needed new clothes. The company that was about to become the primary contractor on a $625 million government infrastructure project. Dad, Eleanor said slowly, her mind beginning to work through the implications with the methodical precision that had made her one of the most sought-after civil engineers in the state. When exactly did the DOT say they'd make their final decision on the I-95 expansion contract? Richard's eyes widened. Today. They said by end of business today, but Ellie, there were 16 firms competing for that contract. 16. Some of them had 10 times our annual revenue. I told you not to get your hopes up. I told you, call Thomas back, Eleanor interrupted, her voice gaining strength. Right now. Use my phone. Her father took the device with trembling hands. Whether from cold or shock, Eleanor couldn't tell. She watched his face as Thomas answered, watched the color drain completely from his weathered cheeks, watched his mouth fall open, watched him grip the lamppost for support. How much? Richard whispered, then louder. How much did you say? 625 million? But the bid was for 550. I don't. He listened, his eyes getting wider and wider. An accelerated timeline. They're adding 75 million for an accelerated timeline. Thomas, that's more money than our company has made in its entire 30-year history, combined, with interest. Eleanor felt something cold settle in her chest, and it had nothing to do with the snow that was now falling so heavily she could barely see the cars parked on the street. It was the same feeling she'd had when she was 16 and discovered that her high school chemistry teacher had been stealing credit for his students' science fair projects. The same feeling she'd had at 23 when she realized her graduate school advisor was publishing her research under his own name. The same feeling she'd had 6 months ago when she'd come home early from a conference and found Vivian's car in her driveway at 2 p.m, found Derek's phone face down on the kitchen counter, found the bedroom door locked from the inside. Cold, calculating, absolutely certain. Dad, she said quietly, give me the phone. Thomas's voice burst through the speaker before she could even say hello. Eleanor, Jesus Christ, where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for an hour. The DOT wants you in D.C. tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. They're holding a press conference to announce the contract award, and they want you front and center. Eleanor, do you understand what this means? This is the biggest infrastructure contract awarded to a woman-owned business in Department of Transportation history. They're calling you a trailblazer. CNN wants an interview. The Washington Post is running a profile. Thomas, Eleanor's voice cut through his excitement like a blade. I need you to do something for me. Several things, actually. And I need them done tonight. Tonight? Eleanor, it's almost 6 p.m. and the snow. Tonight, she repeated. First, I need you to pull every financial document related to Derek Ashford. Every bank account, every investment, every asset acquired during our marriage. I want to know exactly what he has, where it came from, and how much of it I'm legally entitled to per the divorce settlement. There was a pause. Then, Eleanor, the divorce was finalized this morning. You signed away your rights to the marital home and his business assets in exchange for a clean break and my freedom. Yes, I remember. I don't care about what I signed away. I care about what I'm owed that wasn't included in that settlement. Community property, Thomas. We live in a community property state. I want every asset we acquired during our 12-year marriage valued and divided. Today, tonight. I don't care if you have to wake up every accountant in the state. Eleanor, Thomas's voice carried a note of concern. What happened? Eleanor looked at the house again. Through the snow, she could just make out Derek pulling Vivian close, kissing her neck. The same neck Eleanor had held back Vivian's hair from when she was sick with food poisoning 3 years ago. The same neck Eleanor had helped clasp a necklace around at Vivian's mother's funeral. The same neck Eleanor had. She stopped the thought before it could form completely. He pushed us out into the snow, Thomas. Me and my father. His 72-year-old father-in-law who taught him everything he knows about construction management. He physically put his hands on both of us and shoved us out of what used to be my house. And his new wife, my best friend of 18 years, spat in my face. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long, Eleanor thought the call had dropped. Thomas? I'm here. His voice had changed completely. Thomas Whitmore had been her attorney for 7 years, had handled her business contracts, her patents, her property disputes. She'd never heard him sound quite like this. Eleanor, I'm going to ask you a question, and I need you to answer it honestly. Are you looking for revenge, or are you looking for justice? Eleanor watched a light flicker on in the upstairs bedroom. Her old bedroom, with the reading nook she'd designed herself, with the skylight she'd fought the HOA for permission to install. She watched shadows move across the ceiling. She watched Derek's silhouette merge with Vivian's. I'm looking for both, she said flatly, and I have $625 million to make it happen. So I'll ask you again, are you going to help me, or do I need to find an attorney who will? I'll make the calls, Thomas said immediately. But Eleanor, I need to tell you something about the contract. The reason they added the $75 million for the accelerated timeline. Tell me in the car, Dad and I are freezing, and I need to get him somewhere warm before his heart can't take any more stress. She ended the call and handed the phone back to her father, who was staring at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Pride? Concern? Fear? Ellie, he said slowly, your mother used to get that same look in her eyes, right before she did something brilliant and terrifying. Mom bankrupted 3 companies that tried to cheat her, Eleanor said, and she did it without $625 million in government backing. I'd say I'm at a significant advantage. She also died with more enemies than friends. Dad. Eleanor turned to face him fully, snow swirling around them both. They spat in my face. In my face. While the man I loved for 12 years watched and did nothing. The man I helped build from a junior project manager making $43,000 a year into the owner of a firm that grossed $8 million last year. I put him through his MBA. I networked for him. I introduced him to every connection I had. I designed the structural systems for his first 3 major projects for free. Free because I believed we were partners. I believed we were building something together. Her voice was rising now, breaking, and she fought to control it. And you know what he said to me when I found out about Vivian? When I confronted him? He said, she makes me feel alive in a way you never could. She's passionate and spontaneous and fun, and you're just practical. Practical. Like it's a character flaw that I kept our household running while he played golf with clients. Like it's a deficit that I managed our finances so well we could afford his dream car and his dream house and his dream life while I drove a 7-year-old sedan and wore suits from outlet malls. Richard's hand found her shoulder. So you're going to show him exactly how practical you can be. No. Eleanor's voice dropped to something cold and controlled again. I'm going to show him exactly how impractical it was to underestimate me. They made their way to Richard's truck, a 15-year-old Ford that had carried lumber and dreams across 3 states and through countless construction sites. Eleanor's car, A sleek BMW that Derek had insisted she needed for proper presentation at client meetings was still parked in the driveway of the house she no longer had keys to. She'd worry about retrieving it later. Right now, she needed warmth and information and a plan. As Richard started the engine and cranked the heat, Eleanor pulled out her phone again and began scrolling through the emails. One caught her attention immediately, a message from someone named Victoria Chen, whose title listed her as the Deputy Secretary of Transportation. Ms. Ashford, I want to personally congratulate you on winning the I-95 expansion contract. Your proposal was not only the most technically sound and cost-effective of the 16 submissions we reviewed, but it also demonstrated an innovative approach to sustainable infrastructure that aligns perfectly with the administration's climate goals. However, I feel I should be transparent about something. Your ex-husband, Derek Ashford, submitted a bid through his firm as well. It was ranked 14th out of 16. During the review process, he called my office 17 times attempting to leverage what he called his insider knowledge of your proposal, suggesting that much of the technical work was actually his and that you lack the capacity to manage a project of this scale. These calls violated ethical bidding guidelines and resulted in his firm being permanently barred from future DOT contracts. I mention this because you should be aware that Mr. Ashford may attempt to claim credit for or interfere with your project. Please document any such attempts as they could constitute grounds for legal action. Again, congratulations. I look forward to working with you. Victoria Chen, Deputy Secretary, Department of Transportation. Eleanor read the email 3 times, each word sinking deeper into her consciousness. Derek had tried to sabotage her bid, had tried to steal credit for her work, had called the DOT 17 times to undermine her, and in doing so, had gotten himself permanently barred from federal contracts. She started laughing. It began as a small sound, almost a hiccup, then grew until her whole body was shaking with it. Richard glanced over, concerned, as Eleanor doubled over in the passenger seat, tears streaming down her face. Though whether from laughter or rage or the delayed shock of everything, she couldn't tell. Ellie! He destroyed himself, she gasped. Dad, he destroyed himself. He tried to sabotage my bid, and all he did was get his own company blacklisted from federal work. Forever. Do you know how much of his business depends on government contracts? About 60%. 60% of his revenue just vanished because he couldn't stand the idea that I might succeed without him. Richard pulled the truck over to the side of the road, put it in park, and turned to his daughter. Eleanor Marie Dalton, he said, using her maiden name deliberately, I need you to breathe and think very carefully about what you do next. You have power now, real power, the kind that can build empires or destroy lives. Your mother had that same power once, and she used it like a weapon, and it ate her alive from the inside, made her suspicious of everyone, paranoid about every slight, unable to enjoy any victory because she was too busy planning the next battle. Dad, I'm not finished. His voice was gentle but firm. I watched the woman I love turn into someone I barely recognized because she let her anger drive every decision. And when she died, when that heart attack took her at 58 years old, you want to know what her last words to me were? I should have forgiven more. That's it. That's what she wanted me to remember. Not her victories, not her brilliant revenge plots, not the companies she bankrupted or the people she crushed. Just that she should have forgiven more. Eleanor sat in silence, the truck's heater blasting warm air that was finally beginning to thaw her frozen fingers. Outside, the snow was falling so heavily now that she could barely see the road ahead. I can't forgive this, she said finally. Dad, I can't. If it was just the affair, maybe. If it was just the divorce, maybe. But they humiliated me. They destroyed my sense of safety and trust and home. And Derek tried to sabotage my career, the one thing I built entirely on my own, without his help or his influence. He tried to take even that from me. I'm not asking you to forgive, Richard said quietly. I'm asking you to be smart about your anger. Use it as fuel, not as a weapon. Build something so extraordinary that his failure becomes just a footnote in your success story, not the defining motivation of your empire. Eleanor turned to look at her father, This man who had raised her alone after her mother's death, who had taught her to read blueprints before she could read chapter books, who had shown up to every school event and every award ceremony and every disappointment with the same steady presence. What if I want both? She asked. What if I want to build something extraordinary and make sure he knows exactly what he lost? Richard smiled, just a little. Then I guess you're your mother's daughter after all. Just promise me one thing. Don't lose yourself in the process. Don't become so focused on his downfall that you forget to celebrate your own rise. Eleanor nodded slowly, then pulled out her phone again and dialed Thomas back. I need you to add something to that list, she said when he answered. I want you to research every single one of Derek's current contracts, every project his firm is working on. I want to know who the clients are, what the timelines look like, what the profit margins are. And then I want you to very quietly, very professionally, approach those clients with better offers. Eleanor, that's aggressive? Yes. Unethical? No. Illegal? Definitely not. I'm simply going to offer superior service at competitive rates to clients who are free to choose their contractors. If Derek can't compete with me on merit, that's his problem, not mine. She could hear Thomas typing rapidly. You're going to poach his entire client list. No, Eleanor corrected. I'm going to give his clients better options and let them make informed decisions. There's a difference. Oh, and Thomas? That press conference tomorrow in D.C.? I want to make sure certain people are invited. What people? Derek's biggest clients, his investors, his board members, and his new wife's father, who happens to sit on the city planning commission and has been blocking permits for my father's company for the past 18 months. There was a long pause. Eleanor, you're playing a dangerous game. No, she said, watching the snow continue to fall outside the truck window. I'm playing chess while everyone else thought we were playing checkers. There's a difference. She ended the call and turned to her father. Take me to the office. I have a press conference to prepare for, a speech to write, and approximately 14 hours to become the most composed, professional, and devastatingly successful version of myself that's ever existed. Richard put the truck in gear and pulled back onto the road. Your mother would be proud, he said quietly. Terrified, but proud. Eleanor stared out at the snow-covered streets, at the city she'd called home for 12 years, at the life she'd built and lost and was about to rebuild bigger and better than before. Good, she said. Let them be terrified. All of them. The office building looked different at night, empty and echoing in a way that Eleanor had never noticed during regular business hours. The lights flickered on automatically as she and Richard made their way through the lobby, their footsteps the only sound except for the distant hum of heating systems working overtime against the brutal cold outside. Dalton and Sons Construction occupied the third floor of a modest building in the industrial district, 3,000 square feet of office space that always felt slightly too small for the dreams they contained. Eleanor had her own office here, a corner room with windows facing east where she did the structural engineering work that formed the backbone of her father's construction projects. The room was exactly as she'd left it 48 hours ago, before the divorce finalization, before Derek's hastily arranged wedding, before her entire world had splintered into before and after. Her drafting table held the preliminary sketches for a municipal building project. Her computer monitor displayed the last email she'd read, a rejection from a potential client who'd chosen Derek's firm instead, citing his more established reputation. Eleanor stood in the doorway, staring at that email, feeling something sharp and cold crystallize in her chest. Ellie? Her father's voice came from behind her. We should call Thomas back. Get the full details on the contract before... Dad. Eleanor's voice was steady now. All the earlier chaos burned away to leave something harder and more focused. How many employees do we have? 43? You know that. How many could we scale to if we had unlimited capital and a guaranteed project timeline? Richard moved to stand beside her, following her gaze to the computer screen. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that a $625 million contract is going to require significant scaling. More engineers, more project managers, more equipment, more infrastructure. I'm thinking we're going to need to hire quickly and hire well, And I'm thinking that Derek's company currently employs about 70 people, at least 15 of whom I personally recruited for him over the years. Eleanor? 15 people who I trained, who I mentored, who I helped develop their skills and portfolios. 15 people who are about to watch their company's federal contract opportunities vanish because their boss couldn't control his ego. She turned to her father. We need to make calls tonight before Derek realizes what's about to hit him. It's 8 p.m. on a Friday night in the middle of a snowstorm, which means everyone's home, not traveling, with nothing to do but answer their phones and contemplate their career futures. Eleanor moved to her desk and woke up her computer. I need a list of Derek's current employees. I need their contact information, their specializations, their current salaries, and I need it in the next 30 minutes. Richard didn't move. Ellie, you need to slow down. You need to process what happened today. I need to act while I have the advantage of surprise. Eleanor interrupted. Dad, in about 6 hours, every news outlet in the country is going to be running stories about me winning this contract. Derek is going to wake up to headlines about his ex-wife's unprecedented success. And about 4 seconds after that, he's going to start damage control, calling clients, reassuring employees, spinning a narrative about how none of this affects his business. I need to move before he does. She pulled up her contact management system, fingers flying across the keyboard. Rachel Morrison, senior structural engineer. I recruited her from MIT, spent 6 months training her on Derek's systems, and watched him take credit for every design she produced. Current salary, $95,000. We offer her 120 plus equity in the expanded company. We can afford anything now, Dad. That's what you're not understanding. The DOT contract includes advance payment for equipment purchases and personnel scaling. The money is already approved. All we need to do is deploy it strategically. Eleanor's phone rang. Jennifer Park, her business partner and the company's chief financial officer. She answered on speaker. Please tell me the news about the DOT contract is real and not some stress-induced hallucination, Jennifer said without preamble. Please tell me I didn't just get 17 calls from reporters asking about a $625 million deal that I knew nothing about. It's real, Eleanor confirmed. And Jenny, I need you in the office. Now. Tonight. Eleanor, have you looked outside? The snow is... I'll send a car service. I'll pay triple overtime. Hell, I'll buy you a snowmobile if that's what it takes. I need you here within the hour with our complete financial projections, our scaling capacity analysis, and a hiring budget that assumes unlimited capital within the scope of the DOT contract parameters. There was a long pause. Then, what happened? And don't tell me nothing, because I can hear it in your voice. Something happened after the divorce finalization. Eleanor looked at her father, who was watching her with that same mixture of pride and concern. Derek pushed me and Dad out into the snow, physically, while his new wife spat in my face, and then I found out I'm about to become the most successful woman in infrastructure development in the country, and I realized I have both the resources and the motivation to systematically dismantle everything he built using my connections and my expertise. Another pause. I'll be there in 45 minutes. Should I bring wine? Bring coffee. We're not celebrating yet. We're strategizing. Eleanor ended the call and turned back to her computer, pulling up files she'd maintained for years. Comprehensive records of every employee Derek had hired based on her recommendations, complete with their skills, their career goals, the conversations she'd had with them about their aspirations. Marcus Thompson, she said, then stopped. Wait, no, he changed his name. Now it's Alexander Reed, Senior Project Manager, former Marine, incredible logistical mind, absolutely wasted on the residential projects Derek keeps assigning him because they're safe bets. I told Derek 3 years ago that Alex wanted to work on major infrastructure. Derek said infrastructure was too risky, too complex, that Alex wasn't ready. She picked up her phone and dialed from memory. The call was answered on the third ring. Eleanor, Alex's voice was cautious. Is everything okay? Alex, I'm sorry to call so late, and I'm sorry to be direct, but I don't have time for pleasantries. Are you happy at Ashford Construction? The pause that followed told her everything she needed to know. That's An interesting question, given the timing of your divorce. Eleanor, I'm sorry about... Don't be sorry. Answer the question. Are you happy there? I'm employed there. That's not what I asked. Another pause. No, I'm not happy. Derek has me managing subdivision projects when I could be doing commercial or infrastructure work. But Eleanor, I'm not sure what this has to do with... I'm offering you a position as Senior Project Manager for Infrastructure Development at Dalton & Sons Construction. $135,000 annual salary, full benefits, equity options, and the opportunity to manage portions of the largest DOT contract awarded to a private firm this year. You'd be overseeing elements of a $625 million I-95 expansion project with a team of engineers and contractors you'd help me select. Are you interested? The silence stretched so long, Eleanor thought the call had dropped. Alex, did you say $625 million? Yes. And Derek knows about this? He's about to. Tomorrow morning. Press conference in D.C. at 8 a.m. So I need your answer tonight, because by tomorrow afternoon, I'm going to be fielding inquiries from every qualified infrastructure professional in the region, and I'd like to secure the people I actually want to work with before I'm drowning in generic applications. Eleanor, if I leave Derek's firm to come work for you immediately after your divorce, he's going to lose his mind. He's going to, what? Alex, be upset? Be angry? Feel betrayed by someone he trusted? Eleanor's voice was sharp now, because from where I'm sitting, having been physically thrown out of my own house today by the man I supported for 12 years, I'm remarkably unconcerned with Derek's emotional state. She heard Alex take a deep breath. When would you need me to start? Monday. And Alex, bring any project documentation you have full rights to. Anything you personally developed, any systems you created, any processes you innovated. If Derek tries to claim it's proprietary, we'll fight that battle. But I'm betting you're going to discover that most of your best work was never properly credited to you in the first place. Monday, Alex confirmed. I'll be there. And Eleanor? For what it's worth, everyone at the office knows what Derek did was wrong. The divorce, the affair with Vivian, the way he's been talking about you since you filed, we're not blind. Eleanor felt something tighten in her throat. Thank you. That means more than you know. I'll have Jennifer send over the employment contract tonight. Sign it, scan it back, and welcome to the future of Dalton & Sons Construction. She ended the call and immediately dialed the next number on her list. Then the next. Then the next. By the time Jennifer arrived 43 minutes later, shaking snow from her coat and carrying an industrial-sized coffee thermos, Eleanor had made 17 calls and secured 12 commitments from Derek's best people. You're poaching his entire senior team, Jennifer said, setting up her laptop on Eleanor's conference table. You know he's going to sue, right? Let him sue, Eleanor said flatly. Let him try to argue in court that employees he undervalued and underpaid aren't allowed to accept better offers from competitors. It'll be great publicity for us. The innovative, woman-owned firm offering career advancement versus the bitter ex-husband trying to trap people in dead-end positions. Richard had been quiet during Eleanor's calling spree, sitting in the corner and listening to her recruitment pitches with an unreadable expression. Now he stood and moved to the window, looking out at the snow that showed no signs of stopping. Your mother did something like this once, he said quietly. Poached an entire team from a competitor who tried to undercut her on a bid. She called it strategic talent acquisition. The competitor called it corporate warfare. They went to court, fought for 18 months, and you know who won? The lawyers. The legal fees alone nearly bankrupted both companies. Eleanor joined him at the window. What would you have me do instead, Dad? Take the high road? Be gracious in victory? Thank Derek for the life lessons he taught me about trust and betrayal? I'd have you be smart, Richard said, not reactive. There's a difference between dismantling someone's empire and building your own. Why can't I do both? He turned to face her. Because one leaves you exhausted and empty, and the other leaves you fulfilled. Ellie, I'm not asking you to forgive Derek. I'm not even asking you to be kind to him. I'm asking you to think about what you actually want out of this situation. Do you want Derek destroyed? Because that's achievable. You have the resources, the platform, the motivation. You could systematically take apart everything he's built and salt the earth behind you so thoroughly that he'd never work in this industry again. That sounds perfect, Eleanor said. It sounds like a full-time job, Richard corrected. And while you're doing it, while you're dedicating all your energy and brilliance to making Derek suffer, you're not building the revolutionary infrastructure company you've always talked about. You're not innovating sustainable construction methods. You're not mentoring young engineers. You're not doing any of the things that actually matter to you. You're just punishing someone who isn't worth your time. Eleanor stared at her father, feeling the truth of his words like a physical weight. He spat in my face, Dad. Vivian spat in your face. Derek watched. And both of those actions tell you everything you need to know about their character and nothing you didn't already suspect about their lack of it. Richard's hand found her shoulder. But here's what I know about you, Eleanor Marie. You're capable of extraordinary things. Things that will change this industry, this region, maybe this country. And you can't do those extraordinary things if you're spending all your energy on revenge. Jennifer cleared her throat from the conference table. I hate to interrupt this moment of paternal wisdom, but I've been running numbers while you two had your heart-to-heart, and I need Eleanor to understand something about the DOT contract. They both turned to her. Jennifer's expression was serious, her laptop screen glowing in the dim office light. The $625 million figure is the total project budget, she said. That includes materials, labor, equipment, permits, everything. Our actual profit margin, assuming standard operating costs and reasonable efficiency, is going to be around 7 to 9%. That's roughly $43 to $56 million over the 3-year project timeline. That's still an enormous amount of money, Eleanor said. It is, Jennifer agreed. It's also not unlimited revenge budget money. If you're serious about poaching Derek's team, about outbidding him on every project, about systematically destroying his business, those things cost money. Legal fees, signing bonuses, competitive bidding at loss leader prices to steal his clients, all of it adds up fast. And every dollar you spend on revenge is a dollar you're not investing in equipment or safety systems or the innovative construction methods that made our proposal stand out in the first place. Eleanor moved to the conference table and looked at Jennifer's spreadsheet. The numbers were clear and brutal in their honesty. Yes, she could afford to hurt Derek, but it would cost her, not just in money, but in opportunity, in growth, in everything she claimed to care about more than petty vengeance. Show me a different scenario, she said slowly. Show me what happens if we focus entirely on executing the DOT contract perfectly, on building our reputation, on investing in innovation and growth. Jennifer's fingers flew across the keyboard. Okay, same 3-year timeline, but instead of spending resources on competitive bidding and employee poaching, we invest in efficiency systems, sustainability certifications, and strategic partnerships with other women-owned businesses in adjacent fields. We become known not as the company that destroyed Derek Ashford, but as the company that revolutionized regional infrastructure development. New numbers populated the screen, higher profit margins, stronger balance sheets, growth projections that made Eleanor's earlier fantasies of revenge look small and petty by comparison. In this scenario, Jennifer continued, by year 5, we're positioned to bid on projects 3 times the size of the DOT contract. By year 7, we're regional leaders with enough capital to expand nationally. By year 10, she paused, looking up at Eleanor. By year 10, we're a billion-dollar company, and Derek Ashford is a footnote in articles about our founding story. Eleanor stared at the numbers, feeling something shift in her chest. This was what she'd always wanted, wasn't it? Not to destroy someone else, but to build something extraordinary. To prove that her practical, methodical approach wasn't a character flaw, but a superpower. But it means letting him go, she said quietly. It means not pursuing the revenge that feels so justified right now. No, Richard corrected. It means choosing a better revenge. The kind where you become so successful that his betrayal becomes the best thing that ever happened to you. The kind where people ask him in interviews what it was like being married to Eleanor Dalton, and he has to smile and pretend he's happy for your success while dying inside. Jennifer nodded. Living well is the best revenge. It's a cliché for a reason. Eleanor's phone buzzed with an incoming email. She glanced at it automatically, then froze. The message was from Derek. Eleanor, I heard about the DOT contract. Congratulations. I always knew you were capable of great things. I'm sorry about earlier today. Things got heated and Vivian, well, you know how she gets when she's emotional. I shouldn't have let her treat you that way. I shouldn't have treated you that way. You deserve better. I'm hoping we can move forward professionally now that the divorce is finalized. My company would love to discuss subcontracting opportunities on the I-95 project. I think our firms could complement each other well. And there's more than enough work to go around. Let me know if you're open to a conversation. Derek Eleanor read the email 3 times, each sentence more insulting than the last. The casual congratulations, the weak apology that blamed Vivian while absolving himself. The breathtaking audacity of asking for subcontracting work on her project after he'd tried to sabotage her bid. She started typing a response, her fingers moving faster than her brain, rage and hurt and vindication all flowing into words that would eviscerate him, that would remind him of every way he'd failed and every reason he deserved to suffer. That would, Eleanor, her father's hand on her arm stopped her. Don't send it. Whatever you're writing, don't send it. Why not? He deserves nothing, Richard said firmly. Not your anger, not your time, not your attention. He's trying to bait you into a response, trying to get you engaged in a dialogue so he can spin some narrative about amicable professional relationships despite personal difficulties. Don't give him that power. Eleanor looked at the unsent email on her screen, paragraph after paragraph of precisely crafted rage. Then she looked at the spreadsheets Jennifer had created, at the vision of a future where Derek was irrelevant and she was extraordinary. She deleted the email, all of it. Then she typed 3 sentences. Derek, thank you for your note. I'm not currently considering subcontractors, but I'll keep your firm in mind should that change. Best of luck with your future endeavors. Professional, cold, final. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. There, she said, feeling something release in her chest. That's all he gets. 3 sentences and a door firmly closed. Jennifer was smiling. You know what he's going to do now, right? He's going to obsess over those 3 sentences. He's going to read between every line, looking for hidden meanings or coded messages. He's going to waste hours trying to figure out if future endeavors was meant as an insult or a dismissal or a prediction of his failure. Good, one Eleanor said. Let him waste his time on me while I'm busy building an empire. The next 6 hours passed in a blur of activity. Jennifer drafted employment contracts. Richard contacted equipment suppliers and scheduling coordinators. Eleanor prepared her remarks for the morning press conference, choosing every word carefully to convey competence, vision, and absolute confidence. By 3 a.m., they had a plan. By 4 a.m., they had commitments from 15 of Derek's former employees, all of whom had signed contracts and would begin work on Monday. By 5 a.m., Eleanor had showered in the office bathroom, changed into the professional suit she kept in her closet for emergency meetings, and consumed enough coffee to keep a small army awake. At 6 a.m., her phone rang. Thomas Whitmore calling from D.C. The press conference has been moved up, he said without preamble. 7 a.m. instead of 8. Deputy Secretary Chen wants to make the announcement before the morning news cycle really gets going. There's a car waiting for you outside. Private jet. You'll be here in 90 minutes. Eleanor, are you ready for this? She looked around her office, at her father dozing in a chair, at Jennifer finalizing spreadsheets, at the empire they were about to build. I'm ready, she said, and she was. The article in Forbes had a photo that Derek couldn't stop staring at. Eleanor standing in front of a partially completed highway interchange, wearing a hard hat and a smile that radiated pure confidence. The headline read, Eleanor Dalton, How One Woman's Practical Approach is Revolutionizing Infrastructure Development. The article detailed everything. The DOT contract, the sustainable construction methods her team was pioneering, the partnerships she'd formed with other women-owned businesses, the mentorship program she'd established for young engineers. There was a sidebar about the 15 employees who'd left Ashford Construction to join her team, all of whom praised her vision and leadership. There was exactly one mention of Derek, tucked into the 3rd paragraph. Following a contentious divorce from contractor Derek Ashford, Dalton leveraged her newfound independence to secure the largest infrastructure contract awarded to a woman-owned business in DOT history. That was it. One sentence. His entire relationship with her, their 12 years together, reduced to a contextual footnote in her success story. Derek's company had lost 3 major clients in the past 4 months. The federal contract ban had devastated his revenue projections. Half his team had defected to Eleanor's firm. His investors were getting nervous. Vivian was starting to make comments about how he'd promised her a certain lifestyle, and how that lifestyle seemed increasingly out of reach. His phone buzzed with a news alert. Eleanor had just announced a second major contract, a $380 million expansion of the regional public transportation system. In her statement to the press, she'd thanked her team, her father, her business partner, and everyone who believed in our vision. She didn't mention him at all. That was worse somehow. Worse than anger, worse than vindication, worse than any revenge he'd imagined she might take. She'd simply moved on, built something extraordinary, become someone extraordinary, and left him behind like he'd never mattered at all. Derek looked at the divorce papers still sitting on his desk, at the signature line where Eleanor had signed her maiden name with perfect practice precision. Eleanor Marie Dalton. Not Ashford. Never Ashford again. He'd pushed her out into the snow, had watched Vivian spit in her face, had tried to sabotage her career, and she'd responded by becoming the most successful woman in their entire industry while he struggled to keep his company afloat. The revenge wasn't what she'd done to him. The revenge was what she'd done without him, and it crushed him more thoroughly than any vindictive plot ever could have. His phone rang. Vivian calling for the 3rd time that day to discuss their credit card bills. He let it go to voicemail. On his computer screen, Eleanor's Forbes photo smiled out at him, confident, successful, completely and utterly over him. He'd thought she was just practical, just methodical, just predictable. He'd been catastrophically, devastatingly wrong, and now he would spend the rest of his career watching her soar while he struggled to remember what it felt like to matter. The best revenge, Derek was learning too late, wasn't destruction, it was irrelevance, and Eleanor Dalton had mastered it perfectly.